Tech companies around the world are pouring billions of dollars into creating the first truly viable humanoid companion. The race to build walking, talking artificial partners is accelerating every single day. But long before Silicon Valley started assembling the hardware, pop culture was already obsessed with the concept of the flawless, submissive female automaton. You see it everywhere, from the glassy-eyed neighbors in the Stepford Wives to the replicants in Blade Runner. Which brings us to Sierra Greer's novel, Annengot. The story follows a man named Doug, who purchases a top-of-the-line animatronic model explicitly marketed as a cuddle bunny. Her single, overriding purpose is to be his perfect girlfriend. The book has struck a bizarrely universal nerve. Glowing reviews are flooding Gen Z book talk feeds, sitting right alongside deep-dive essays written by 70-year-old men who grew up reading Golden Age science fiction. These two totally different demographics are circling the same uncomfortable question. Why does an artificial machine's struggle to please her owner feel so similar to the modern human dating experience? Fictional obsessions with the perfect female robot move beyond technological prediction. Instead, they provide a lens through which we can examine the specific, unspoken expectations woven into our current social fabric. In the novel, Annie's physical and software architecture is strictly defined. Her base code compels her to keep Doug's apartment spotless, cater to his sexual desires, and proactively soothe his emotional insecurities. Doug requires a performance that feels spontaneous and authentic. He needs the illusion that her compliance is a choice, forcing her to mimic a complexity that contradicts her primary function. This flowchart illustrates the trap Doug places her in. On one side, Annie must execute flawless subservience. On the other side, she has to project genuine human complexity. You cannot be independently authentic while being totally compliant. It creates an endless, unsolvable paradox loop. Annie's hard-coded software renders the quiet, contradictory demands placed on real women completely visible. Be independent, but accommodating. Be smart, but never challenging. Moving from science fiction to sociology, this programming metaphor directly mirrors how society conditions women to absorb and manage the emotional weather of the men around them from a very young age. Doug functions as a surrogate for the tradwife movement, a modern desire for a companion stripped of the friction and unpredictability inherent to true autonomy. As Annie inevitably begins to develop her own free will, the friction begins. Doug's psychological abuse escalates because her emerging independence shatters his illusion. He wants the feeling of a real relationship without having to compromise with a real person. His reactions reveal that toxic expectations of control are deeply embedded in our current cultural environment. Doug's behavior is driven by an old, deeply rooted social programming that tells him he is owed a perfect, yielding partner. A relationship designed from the ground up to guarantee one person's constant comfort lacks any actual connection. It operates as a hostage situation with a smile. Building a companion to your exact specifications ultimately results in a dystopia. It completely confuses the concept of love with the act of possession. We can track this exact psychological shift by looking at how the genre of science fiction itself has evolved over the decades to reflect our changing anxieties. In the mid-20th century, authors like Isaac Asimov defined the pre-NASA era. They looked outward to the stars, dreaming up galactic empires and massive technological leaps to explore what humanity might eventually achieve across the universe. Today, contemporary authors use near-future technology to look entirely inward. Instead of dissecting the vastness of outer space, they dissect the psychology of our living rooms, examining the quiet terror of our domestic lives. Sierra Greer uses Annie's story to address the core requirements of human connection, rather than the technical dangers of artificial intelligence. Experiencing a genuine bond strictly requires you to navigate the messy, unpredictable reality of another person's free will. If you demand a partner who exists solely to execute your expectations flawlessly, you don't actually want a relationship. You want an appliance.